Good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I'll please ask everyone to silence cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during council meetings. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. by recognizing the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga. The Council of the Municipality of Brighton recognizes that the Mississauga nations are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. I have a motion to amend the agenda. Before I do, I will note that Councillor Butwell has sent her regrets for this evening's meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council amend the May 12th, 2025 planning meeting agenda to remove 10.3 bylaw for the assumption of Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the May 12th, 2025 planning meeting agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. We have no delegations this evening, which brings us to our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council move into the statutory public meeting May 12th, 2025 at 6:32 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. Municipality of Brighton takes steps beyond the requirements of the Planning Act to engage the community in land use planning initiatives. The municipality also holds a statutory public meeting on the planning item and then receives a staff report with a recommendation on which council will make a decision. It is during this meeting that council depends on the community to provide input for our decision. This input may be received in advance of the statutory public meeting by sending correspondence to the clerk's office and/or by making an oral submission to the council at the statutory public meeting. This will best inform council on the land use planning matter prior to council making our final decision. Recent statutory changes limit appeal rights to only the applicant and specified regulated persons. For details or information on the new appeal process, please visit the municipal website or contact the clerk's office. So our first item in the statutory public meeting is feedback on the proposed community improvement plans for 2025-2026. And Ms. Birch, I understand you're fielding questions on this or comments. Do you have anything to talk to us about?
No, I do not.
Thank you. So are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the community improvement plans for 2025 to 2026? No one seems to be rushing to the microphone. No one on Zoom. Members of council, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment, really. I'm just pleased to finally see this this pillar of the community improvement plan finally come to fruition. It's been something that previous councils have worked on. It was kind of put on the shelf. So thank you to the planning department and the economic development department for finally getting this done, and hopefully businesses in the downtown core will be able to take advantage.
Thank you. Yes, it does feel like a long time reaching this finish line, but it's not everyone will think that around the room, but it's a good thing that we're here. Any other members of council with questions or comments? Ms. Birch, any final comments? She's shaking her head no. Motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council receive any public feedback on the proposed community improvement plans for 2025 to 2026. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the next item in our statutory public meeting is with regard to Bright Light Solar Inc. on 416 Old Wooler Road. The purpose of the public meeting is to address requirements under the Planning Act for hosting a public meeting before council makes a decision and to obtain public input towards making any decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and consent applications. Ms. Britnell, by what method and on what date was notice of these applications given?
Through the chair, notice of the subject applications was provided in accordance with the Planning Act by mail on April 16, 2025 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to applicable agencies as required under the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. And would you also please explain the purpose and reason for the subject applications before council this evening?
Through the chair, the purpose of consent application B02 2025 is to sever 0.14 hectares, 0.35 acres portion of the property located at 448 Old Wooler Road and add it to the rural property located at 416 Old Wooler Road. A fence is to be added to 416 Old Wooler Road that currently resides on 448 Old Wooler Road due to an error from a previous surveyor. 416 Old Wooler Road was previously severed from 448 Old Wooler Road. The severed lands include a portion of a gravel driveway, a well, a pool, and solar panel. A second consent file has also been filed to sever 0.18 hectare, 0.45 acres. Further, the purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application Z04 2025 is to rezone a portion of the subject lands located on 448 Old Wooler Road from the rural exception zone 35 to the rural residential or RR zone, and to rezone a portion of the subject lands located on 416 Old Wooler Road from rural residential zone to rural exception number 35 zone. In essence, a land swap.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the subject applications? And again, no one on Zoom for that purpose. Are there questions or comments from members of council? Ms. Britnell, do you have any final comments?
Through the chair, only to say that Northumberland County is in support of this application and to include a second consent application, and to thank the planning department for their support in my first application.
Well, thank you all then. Appreciate that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the staff report dated May 12, 2025 regarding the subject applications for 416 Old Wooler Road, being consent application B02 2025 and zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z04 2025. And the council grants provisional consent to application B02 2025 subject to the conditions provided in this report. And further, the council enacts a zoning bylaw to rezone the severed portion of the lands to be added to 448 Old Wooler Road from rural residential zone to the rural exception number 35 zone, and the severed portion of the lands to be added to 416 Old Wooler Road from the rural exception number 35 zone to the rural residential zone. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. And that ends our statutory public meeting with this motion that moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council move out of the statutory public meeting May 12th, 2025 at 6:39 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. That brings us to planning reports. The first report is the mobile canteen bylaw variance. Bylaw Enforcement Officer McGee, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mayor, two things I'd like to add to the report. One being that I have notified the Codrington Community Center of this proposal and advise them that's not going to interfere with their shelter or the community center. And the other thing to add, it's not in the report. Staff did contact Northumberland County. I got the response today. Essentially, they're going to be mirroring what Brighton staff are going to do. 1 year trial, assess the space, or if there's going to be any safety issues like traffic. So I'm adding that to the report, and we're good.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receives the staff report dated May 12th, 2025, being a request for a variance to permit 2 mobile canteens at Codrington Park. And the council directs staff to permit a second mobile canteen operation in the name of Dennis Gould and Brad Gordon for the purposes of a pizza food truck at the location of the Codrington Park to be situated on site to the satisfaction of the Director of Infrastructure, Operations and Recreation and staff at the County of Northumberland. And that the permit be for the period of 1 year during which staff will monitor any safety-related or orderliness issues, but with eligibility for renewal in accordance with the satisfaction of the director. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, there is a pizza vendor that occurs on the Sundays in Codrington at the farmer's market. Will this, is this the same pizza vendor or is it a second pizza vendor? And if it's a second pizza vendor, will they be operating at the same time on Sundays at the farmer's market?
Mr. McGee.
Through you, Mayor, I believe it's a second pizza truck. We're not privy to any of the mobile canteens that happen during the farmer's market.
So do we know whether they're going to be operating on Sundays during the farmer's market then as well? And I'm just worried about competition for someone who's been there and doing this on the Sundays.
Mr. McGee.
I don't have that information at this time.
Thank you.
Is it possible to get that information before we potentially impede someone's business?
It's entirely up to council if we want to defer this decision. Councillor Wheeldon.
I don't see competition as impedance.
It's two pizza.
Right, and I
Yeah.
don't think it's a bad thing to have competition. That's more choice for people who are going up to buy pizza. Unless we're in favor of anti-competitive behavior like our neighbors. I'm joking, I'm sorry.
There are 4 pizza joints in a 1 kilometer line and down Elizabeth Street, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And if another one popped up tomorrow, we'd have no say. This is just about whether or not we're issuing or permitting a variance to our mobile canteen bylaw, and not about controlling really what they're vending at the end of the day. Councillor Rowley.
I would wonder that with the Codrington Farmers Market, I think the vendors that are there are by application or approval from the group. So it might be a non-thing anyway. I mean, if the Codrington Farmers Market says, no, you can't sell your pizza because the other guy's selling pizza on Sunday, I think that's something that they could work out with the farmers market.
Councillor Wheeldon.
I think where we might have an issue is if we don't know how this would align with, like, Mr. McGee, are you able, through you, Mayor, are you able to tell us if this permit would allow them to operate during the farmer's market or not? Because I mean, we know that Harry's Hots, for example, operates there during the week with a permit like this, but they also operate on Sundays. Are they operating there on Sundays with this permit, or are they operating on Sundays through arrangements with the farmer's market? Because if they're different and if they conflict, that might be a challenge.
Mr. McKee.
Through you, Mayor, the permit is issued for the full year, I guess 365 days a year. I guess as being a side variance, we could include a clause to not operate on Sundays. Or not, sorry, a mobile canteen variance. that we could include that clause, that operation on Saturdays, because this is your variance.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilden.
I'm just thinking that I don't know how the farmer's market organizes their vendors. And I mean, there are other food vendors there on Sundays who do not have this canteen permit, correct? So they clearly have a different system, and I wouldn't want to have two systems in conflict with each other, regardless of what's being vended.
Mr. McGee, you mentioned that you circulated the Codrington Community Association on this report. Did you also include the farmers market? Because they are two distinct entities.
Through Mayor, no, I just reached out to the Codrington Community Association.
I wonder if we should defer this until even next Tuesday to give staff an opportunity to circulate it and have a conversation with the farmers market to make sure we're not stepping on farmers market toes here.
Yeah.
I think that would be appropriate. So I will need a motion to defer.
May I ask a question, please?
You know you
To
can.
Mr. McGee?
Go ahead.
Mr. McGee, when did you circulate to the Codrington Community Association? Because I'm on that board and I received no correspondence for that.
Just today, probably around 2:30, I sent it to the general email. It really was a courtesy because the Codrington Community Center, I guess for the Sundays, but outside of that, I mean, we've permitted them to be up there without their input. So it was a courtesy so they wouldn't be upset that they're using their shelter or interfering with the community center.
Councillor Wright? No. So I will need a mover that council defer the mobile canteen variance report to May 20th, 2025. Is there a mover? Councillor Wright. Second, Councillor Wielden. Discussion? No, there is no discussion on deferral. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried.
That's okay.
Next report is the proposed cat control bylaw by Law Enforcement Officer Shepherd. We've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I don't, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wielden, that council receives the staff report number PD 2025-30 regarding a bylaw to regulate cats within the municipality of Brighton, and that council directs staff to initiate public consultation regarding a cat control bylaw. And the council directs staff to sole source the municipal animal service provider from either the Quinte Humane Society or Pierce Animal Control, or the Northumberland Humane Society, or a combination thereof, for the services of animal control inclusive of cats. And that a contract or contracts be brought back to council for an agreement bylaw. And the council, if satisfied with the public comments regarding a cat control program and its financial implications, direct staff to present to council an amendment to the dog control bylaw 052-2020 to include the regulation of cats within the municipality. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wielden.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I really appreciate the thorough analysis in this report. Well done. Do you have a recommendation for which organizations to contract with? You've given us a choice, and I don't know the difference, I'll be honest with you. They all sound reputable. Is there a preference or a leaning?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor. In my opinion, I'd say from all of my research that the Northumberland Humane Society is the better option, just because that they have animal control services in-house, rather than what we're doing right now is we're contracted to Pierce Animal Control, who picks up the animals and delivers them to Quinte Humane Society, who's operating as our pound operator. So we have two separate contracts with two separate organizations with two separate clauses, and the prices are varying for both those organizations. So just based on that alone, having the Northumberland Humane Society with everything in-house is my recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Wright?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do either QHS or NHS implement euthanasia?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor, neither of them utilize euthanasia as a measure unless absolutely necessary.
Okay, follow up.
You may.
Option number one looks like it's just basically a continue as is, and we just leave cats out of the equation. Is that how I'm reading it? Am I reading that correctly?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor, there are a couple options here. One being, if we decide not to regulate cats, yes, we can continue our current contract. We are also able to add cats into the current contract that we have, although the rates would change. At this point in time, I don't have an amount because unfortunately we have to provide more details to the Community Humane Society to get those rates at this time.
Okay. Sorry, can I continue? If the bylaw is passed and we do regulate cats, you said, and Northumberland has everything in-house, so they do the capturing, or will that be kind of on the homeowner that's being hassled by said cat?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor, if we implement a cat control bylaw, then if there is a complaint about a stray cat or an injured cat or anything like that, then the Humane Society would handle, basically we would pass the call on to them and they would be the ones responsible for trapping and bringing the cats back to the Humane Society.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If a stray cat is captured and found to be intact, is neuter or spay a mandatory thing that has to happen before releasing back to an owner?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor, yes, it is. The Humane Society will not release any animals unless they are fixed and up to date on vaccines.
Okay, and if a feral cat, because there is a difference between a stray cat and a feral cat, if a feral cat is captured and cannot be adopted through the usual means at the Humane Society, what happens to that cat?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor, I can't speak specifically for Quinte Humane Society. I do know with Northumberland Humane Society, they have a feral cat program in place, and they do adopt out feral cats specifically for barn situations.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything further?
I do actually, just wondering if we decide to regulate cats, do we currently have in place any fines for dog owners who have dogs who aren't licensed? And if we were going to license cats, would something similar be put in place there?
Ms. Shepherd?
Through you, Mayor, we do have administrative monetary penalty right now in place for dog owners who do not have licenses. We generally don't use it because education works very well in terms of licensing. My experience working at the previous municipality that I worked for that did have a cat bylaw was that licensing provisions were optional. So you did have the opportunity to license your cats, but it was more for in case your cat got lost or picked up by the Humane Society or something like that, but it was not mandatory.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Anyone else? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Next report is passing a bylaw to adopt OPA number 18. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing much further, Mayor, just that staff are going to have to take a look at today's new legislation that was announced to see if there's any inferences on this.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that Council receive the staff report dated May 12th, 2025 regarding official plan amendment number 18 pertaining to community engagement policies and procedures and complete information requirements for Planning Act applications, including a more recent revision pertaining to provisions for giving notice for community improvement plans and minor additions to types of potentially required studies, and that council pass the bylaw presented in this agenda to formally adopt a final official plan amendment number 18 and authorize the signature of the mayor and the clerk, and that staff forward OPA number 18 to the county for final approval. Is there any discussion? Councilor Wheeldon.
Further to Director Walsh's point, if there are any significant changes, I haven't had a chance to look at what was announced today. Province has just tabled new legislation. Would this even get final approval at the county, or would we have to change some things?
Director.
The new legislation more or less just reaffirms what's been in place through Ontario Land Tribunal decisions. So there's been essentially a policy precedent, and that's not in the act. But my understanding with the changes that are proposed through the amendments of planning are that now if a municipality asks for a study to be completed, it must be listed in your official plan. So official plan number 18 that's before us makes reference to a long list of studies as part of a complete package that would be part of the application form for a subdivision, for example, but this left more generally in the official plan. So thinking out loud, which is kind of dangerous in front of council, perhaps it might be good if we pivot at this moment and have that list as an appendices to the official plan, and staff will so revise the OPA that's in front of you with that slight change.
Go ahead.
So having a list of every study we could ever possibly ask for in the official plan means that we can ask for all of those, even if it's in an appendix.
Director.
I'm hoping. Yeah, and there's been anticipation for this, given the tribunal precedents. So OPA 18 has been structured such that it looks at and focuses on section 2 of the Planning Act, which is the purposes of the Planning Act, and those are kind of a laundry list of tests that if a application is before the tribunal, you need to address each one of those items, and it's like A to G. And so it's very comprehensive. So the OPA 18 was structured such that any study necessary to address the purposes of the Planning Act Section 2. I'm hoping that will be sufficient. We do have a list in the existing official plan that's not too bad. So the basics are covered. So I think that should work, but I have to see the specific language in the legislation to be sure. And if once staff take a look at it, we might be bringing it back to council despite the motion tonight.
Should we be deferring this?
There was some eagerness to get this forward. We're given some timelines, but I don't think those are immediately upon us currently. So if the mayor has more comfort in deferring this for staff to take a look at the draft legislation, then that wouldn't be an unwise suggestion.
I just think it might be better to have a full package that we know complies with the today announced legislation. So we don't even have to defer. We can refer it back to staff, and who can bring us a report and a bylaw once staff is comfortable with the new legislation and with all of the addendums as well. Is that a fair comment, Director? Council comfortable with that? Motion reads that council refer the report, re-OPA 18 and the bylaw to staff for further review. Is there a mover? Second. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Just quickly going back to the proposed CAT bylaw, we didn't actually provide direction as to which agency for them to go to.
No, I think the next step is a public consultation anyway, and then
Okay.
more advice from staff will come back. So
Got it.
there's a lot of moving parts before we get there. Yeah. Was that what you were going to say, Director?
Yes, Mayor, that's exactly, we're going to sole source with a, meaning we're going to tender between the two. So we have to see what responses we get.
Thank you. The next report is floodplain mapping study. And Manager Warren, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Nothing at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon that council. No, that was referred. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council received the staff report dated May 12, 2025 regarding the floodplain mapping study for Butler Creek and Arena Creek, and that council received the Butler Creek and Arena Creek floodplain mapping study, and the council directs staff to advertise a 60-day comment period in the municipal website, the intent to designate the Butler Creek and Arena Creek floodplain mapping study, and that staff report back to council following the comment period with a summary of comments as well as the draft official plan amendment and the draft zoning bylaw amendment to implement the floodplain mapping study. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Warren, I guess my question is, and I guess that's the probably the reason for the comment period, is you expect to hear from residents who would be affected by this already, or is this to review or consider future development along both Butler and or Arena Creek?
Mr. Warren.
Through the chair, the people that I would expect to hear from the public would be the people that are already affected. And it might also be the people that are now find themselves in the floodplain. They've actually always been in the floodplain. They just know it now. So those people are generally people we hear from, shall we say.
I know one of those people. So, okay, and I'm just going to keep adding to that then. So people who are in the floodplain then, will this affect them at some point? As to how it affects their property, or will there be costs involved as to how they need to mitigate flooding?
Not necessarily to how their own particular properties will need to be flood proofed, but it could play a role if they're looking for building permits to add additional living space within an area known to be prone to flooding. Because the Conservation Authority will have some comments on that for sure.
You both, Councillor Wheeldon.
I'll also say that at Lower Trent, we've already used this new data a couple of times in hearings, and it's been very useful in helping us understand the impacts of development in certain areas, including on Cedar Street, where they're now able to develop a significant portion alongside the creek in ways that we hadn't really thought possible before. And it turns out with this new floodplain mapping, we can see that it will actually, the things they propose to do will improve water flow and flooding outcomes in that area because of the development. So it's good data.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have nothing listed under items for information purposes. There's nothing under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. The first bylaw is with regard to 416 Old Wooler Road and the zoning bylaw amendment. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140, 2002, as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton, as it applies to the lands located at 416 Old Willer Road, described as Concession 5, Part Lot 34, Registered Plan 39R 12260, Part 1, and 448 Old Willer Road, described as Concession 5, Part Lot 34, Registered Plan 39R 12260, Part 2, and PT Part 1. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have referred the amendment, the official plan amendment, back to staff. We removed the assumption of Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility from the agenda. That brings us to question period. Is there anyone in the gallery that has a question with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda? Go ahead, come on up to the microphone, please, Deb.
I've never needed a microphone, sorry.
But there are people on YouTube watching us right now who will want you to have the microphone.
I'm gonna step back a little bit because I'm very loud. I'm Debbie Perry. I'm a resident of Brighton, and I am one of a group that brought the CAP bylaw question to fruition here. One of the concerns that we have is Northumberland Humane Society is a much smaller humane society, and they periodically need to close to intakes. Whereas Quinty has a much larger capacity to take in cats. We're talking 30 cats at Northumberland as opposed to 200 at the Belleville site. So my fear is if we're just gonna go with Northumberland Humane,
Do you have a question?
yeah, what happens when they're at capacity?
So I think that's probably a great question to ask at the public consultation.
Okay,
And I would encourage everyone who has an interest in this to come out. We haven't scheduled that yet, but
Okay.
it will be widely informed. And I know you keep an eye on what we're doing, so.
oh, absolutely. I live here, it's my home. Okay, thank you.
May I ask Ms. Perry a question?
You may not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can do so in about 2 seconds. We're almost done. Brings us to our confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passed on this date. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton planning meeting held on May 12th, 2025. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the May 12th, 2025 council planning meeting adjourn at 7:08 PM. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. As we leave this place, may our actions reflect the principles of peace and democracy that have come to define